In this video, we're going to complete the oil painting fundamentals by introducing two very important parts of this technique: corrections and reworks. Like it or not, these are two terms that are going to be part of our dictionary. While we are painting, we're going to correct mistakes, something that accidentally we did wrong, like for example crossing a sketch line, touching other colors, and so on. After we finish our work and the painting is dry, we're going to rework mistakes that for some reason we couldn't correct while we were painting. For example, two colors that react strangely when we mix them. But most of all, we're going to rework every time there is something that we don't like in our painting. Something that we could do better or we just didn't notice while we were doing it. It's a very common reaction when we finish our work feeling that although we like it, there is something wrong. Sometimes we can't get immediately what it is, or maybe we see something but we are not sure that's the problem. Sometimes when we find the cause of our lack of satisfaction, we are just afraid that if we try to correct it, we are going to ruin the whole painting. And this is why reworks are a very important part of the oil painting technique, because very often reworks are going to help us making our paintings exactly like we want them. For now, let's go back to talk about corrections. We have seen many times that it's pretty normal while we are painting making mistakes, mostly if we are not expert. The first instinct, at least for me, is to cover them with some new paint, and sometimes this eventually can work. But most of the time we can't get exactly what we want. Normally the color changes, and every time we try to fix a problem we cause a new one, and we start messing our work. So better we stop, we take the paint off in the mistakes area, and we repaint it. We actually have seen many times already how to do it. The easiest way, if the mistake is small, is if we clean it using a ear stick. And if it's large, using a makeup pad or a piece of paper. Cleaning a mistake on a rigid support is not a big deal, but we have to be really careful when we do this process on a canvas, because if we apply a strong pressure, we can easily permanently deform the support, and we definitely don't want this. When we clean the paint off the canvas, we have to remember to apply a pressure as low as possible. Normally, this is pretty easy to control when we use ear sticks, but it's not so easy when we use makeup pads. So, if we are painting on a canvas, even on a large mistake, we want to consider using ear sticks to remove it. It definitely needs more time, but it's probably much safer. There is another problem. Although we clean carefully, normally there is always some color left on the support, even if it's a small quantity. Many times this is not a problem because the color that we're going to use above is going to cover the paint below. But sometimes even a small quantity of a different pigment can affect the final color, mostly if on top we use light and transparent paints. So better before we continue our painting to clean the area using some turpentine. But we have to be careful when we use it, because if we use something too soggy, we may get drops running on the support, and we don't want this. Better we unload some turpentine on some paper or a makeup pad before we go to do our cleaning. There are mistakes that are much easier to rework than correct. Most of the time when the job we are doing is pretty difficult, and if we redo it, we may eventually do the same mistake again. For example, if we want to fade a small white area with other colors, there is the chance that at the end the white gets dirty with the other colors we are blending it with. and the part that was supposed to be white isn't anymore. So it's much easier if we leave it there and we rework it later. Reworking at the end is nothing different than painting using the multi-layer method. So to make rework, we need to prepare our palette in the same way we did when we have talked about that method. And in this case, since this is a second layer, it means that we have to thin our oil colors a little bit more than before. We are going to see now an example on how to rework a painting. And we are going to use the work of the lemon we did when we have seen what to use to make our sketches. In that case, we have used a charcoal stick. If we watch this painting, there are a few things that we want to rework. The first is that the lemon looks pretty flat, so we want to give it a bit of deepness. There are also a few mistakes that we want to adjust. The charcoal line on the top is really ugly and it works against what it should be a more realistic lighting. Then we want to change the lemon's shape a little bit and we want to try to hide those charcoal lines that we can see below. Also, the background looks pretty flat, so we're going to try to make something to give it a bit of deepness. Since the light in the scene comes from the top, to give a bit of deepness to the lemon, the top part should be brighter, while the bottom part much darker. So we're going to start making a red line right on the bottom, which is supposed to be the darkest part of the fruit. Bit by bit, we're going to move the paint, blending and fading the whole area in the top direction. Once finished, we are going to do the same thing on the top. In this case, we can achieve different targets at the same time. For example, we can make the top area brighter, we can try to cover the charcoal lines below, and change the lemon's shape all at the same time. It's very important that we use opaque pigments, otherwise we won't be able to cover those lines below. In this case, we're going to use some zinc and titanium white and some Naples yellow that are both very opaque. We're going to start from the very top, painting a white line, trying to cover as much as possible the sketch. Also in this case, we're going to blend and fade the colors, but this time in the bottom direction. To make this part very bright, we're going to add some extra white also here. And also on this small bump on the right. Now, using some Naples yellow, we're going to try to cover the rest of the lines below, and at the same time, we're going to try to change a little bit the lemon's shape in this area to make it look a bit more realistic. Since this yellow is pretty light, we are going to add a touch of red and we're going to blend them. A quick clean to the brush on a tissue and we go back blending these colors until they look good. Now the lemon looks already much better than before, but we can make it better. We can give it more deepness if we make the bottom part very dark and the top part very light. To do this, we are going to make a line with the bistro on the very bottom where the lemon touched the ground, and using a clean brush we're gonna blend it and fade it just a little in the top direction. Now it's the shadow that looks a bit light, so to make it darker we're going to use some gray and we're gonna fade it with some white to adjust it a little bit inside the scene. Now, we want to make the very top part as bright as possible, and here we have a problem because that part is already almost white, and there are no color lighter than white. So, the only way to make it happen if the color below that area becomes a little bit darker. So, we're going to use some Naples yellow, and we're going to complete the job. At this point, there is only one part of the lemon that we want to change, and it's this part here that we're going to fix with some Naples yellow first, then with some red, and at the end with some lemon yellow. Now we're going to fade a little the white here on the right bumper, and at the end we can say that the lemon is complete so that we can move our focus on the background. Using some white, we're going to make the top left corner lighter. And with some gray, we can make the top right corner darker. The gray we have on our palette, it's too dark, and unless we want to prepare a new one lighter, we have to be careful about the quantity we use. So we're going to load a rounded brush, but before we reach the super, we're going to load it on a tissue. In this way, there is only a very small quantity left on its belly, and we can control better what we are doing. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom corner. Now that our painting theoretically is complete, I can't really say that I like it, and it's pretty normal. Sometimes we try to adjust something, but eventually on the other side we make new mistakes, or we notice problems that we didn't get before. In this case, for example, I don't like the background at all. The two corners on the right are too dark now. So once again, we're going to rework it. And we're going to start making these two corners a little bit lighter. Also, the light on the lemon doesn't really look realistic. The background light goes in this direction, while on the lemon it seems coming straight from the top. In this case, to make it look more realistic, we should move the bright side of the lemon a little bit on the left and its dark side on the right. And we should also move its shadow on the right. Now that we have finished the second session of Reworks, we can say that our work is finally complete. But I'm sure that if we look carefully, we can find something that in our opinion doesn't look right. And this is very common among the artists to have the feeling that our works are never complete. And with this last consideration, we have concluded our discussion on corrections and reworks. In the next video, we're going to start making our first abstract painting. If you enjoyed this video, we will really appreciate if you could click on like and subscribe to our channel. It will also help us very much if you could leave a comment. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one.